He needs no introduction, but we're going to give him one anyway. We're talking about the Glass House, Gruen transfer. He's a stand-up comedy legend, formerly at Triple M's Hot Breakfast as well. But more importantly, he is a Western Bulldogs diehard Doggies fan, and will be joined by none other than the great Wil Anderson. So I'm just going to click the button that I need for Wil to join us. And he'll be joining us very soon to chat about 2016 and about how the Dogs are going this year and how we got to this point. Wil Anderson, welcome to your call, my friend.
Thank you very much for having me. I very much appreciate having something to do during a pandemic, because I am currently, you listed a whole lot of things that I did do, and currently what I'm doing is fuck all. Can I swear on this?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm doing a whole lot of fuck all. So I took a little break from my fuck all to come down and chat to you for half an hour, which will break up the monotony of the fuck all that I have to do for the rest of the day.
Look, it's our pleasure. And I actually had that listed, fuck all. I didn't get to that before you joined. I was going to mention, everything that you used to do, and also currently doing fuck all. So, which is proved fruitful for us here at Your Call, Wil. But no, we definitely appreciate your time, and I'm very happy to have you. Last time you and I saw each other, we were actually probably separately going to bed pretty soon last year when we were both in the Triple M offices. I guess to start it off, I guess you're not, I can't say you're missing probably the early morning 4 o'clock alarm.
Well, here's what I will say. At the end of last year, I quit what was a wonderful job. I actually really loved the job. It was you go in every morning, you had someone in the studio making you a coffee. I got to hear all the gossip behind the scenes of the AFL because you've got Eddie and Darcy in there and they know everything. So as a footy fan, like really, I'm just drinking coffee and listening to off-air gossip and getting to be on this, quite fun show to do and talking about all these interesting people. So at the end of last year, it was quite a big decision to quit, but I really wanted to go back and do stand-up comedy. So I had 3 shows that I was going to do this year. And then a global pandemic happened. So they say the secret of comedy is timing. And you never find out that you're a non-essential very quickly when they were like, the first thing that needs to be shut up is the comedy festival. Let's get the clowns out of here. We don't need them right now. Laughter is not the best medicine. So, look, no, I'm not loving, the lack of income and something to do, but I am loving the time that I've got to do things like this and, my own podcast where, the great thing about them is I have a footy podcast of my own, 2 Guys, 1 Cup, that I do with Charlie Clausen. And we've just had time this year to not just be jamming it in between other things we were doing, but just to do it for its own sake. And as a footy fan, that's just been a really fun thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've touched on a few good things there, because I think that's one thing about this whole year and the whole situation. It's kind of everyone's been forced to sort of take a lower gear and reassess things. And obviously, hits an income is a big one, but yeah, like you said, there are positives out of it, and for us, it's been great to be able to open it up and have an opportunity to have people like yourself on and get to know more about your story, and that's a very good segue, actually, if I do say so myself, because the first question we'd like to get out of the way, Wil, on their call and your call, is you're obviously a very passionate Bulldog supporter. You try and keep it under wraps, let's be honest. But we want to do a deep dive into why the Bulldogs. As a young kid growing up, why the Bulldogs?
Well, firstly, I picked a very good week to come on your show.
Yes.
The day after in Adelaide, I'll do this show when I'm in a good mood, and the only way I can guarantee that is, can we play the team that hasn't won a game all season? So I'm coming in a little bit of a high, a little bit of joy in my step when it comes to the Bulldogs after watching that exhibition game yesterday. But I could have been you. I could have been you. So this is what I was going to say, is I could have been a Collingwood fan, though. I was raised, my grandfather, James Anderson, I'm named after my 2 grandfathers, William and James, and good guy, lived nearby to where we grew up, so we saw him a lot. And he was dyed-in-the-wool Collingwood. And his big rule at Christmas was you didn't get your $5 unless you told him that you're a Collingwood fan, and then you get your $5 from Grandpa. It was a pretty good way to hook people into the club. So there does exist, and I never brought this up when I was on the show with Eddie because I just could not bear the headache it would cause me. But there is a photo of me that my brother is very fond of sending to me, of me as a young fella in a Collingwood jumper. Because yeah, there was a period of time, you know, maybe until when I was like, I guess maybe 5 or 6 or something, that if you'd asked me what team I barracked for, it would have been Collingwood. But I had not chosen a team. I was just really saying that I barracked for Collingwood so I could get that $5 at
Yeah.
Christmas from Grandpa, right? I had no real interest. And there's that real thing in AFL culture of you can't change your team. But I've never really subscribed to that. And I guess probably because I changed my team. And so I would have been 5 or 6, you know, maybe a little bit older than that, but around that age anyway. And I wanted to choose a team of my own. And my dad was fine with that because he actually barracks for Geelong. He was the only person in his family who chose a team of his own. And he said, you know what, if you want to choose your own team, choose your own team. And so I decided I would choose my own team. And in the end, all the kids in my family chose different teams. So we're like dad barracks for Geelong and my brother barracks for Essendon and my sister barracks for St Kilda. Like we all have our own teams. And I've always loved that because it gives you some extra involvement in these other teams. But so the Bulldogs for me, I had a friend called Jason McCange. And Jason barracked for the Bulldogs, and he was just he was a year older than me. And just like, you know, when you're younger and you have like a slightly older friend, like they just know so much more about the world, you know, and they can answer all those questions that you want answers to. And so he took me under his wing a bit. And we used to, on Saturday mornings after playing local, you know, country football, we would sit in the car, listen to ABC radio, you know, listen to the footy coverage on ABC radio and eat like meat pies and sausage rolls from the canteen and, you know, drink, you know, sugary drinks. And he would tell me about the world. And he barracked for the Bulldogs. And I was like, well, I'm looking for a team. Maybe I'm going to barrack for the Bulldogs. Now, it turns out he probably only been telling me the good things about the Bulldogs. And he hadn't said you're actually signing up to pretty much, if 2016 hadn't happened, a life of complete and utter misery. But 2016 did happen. So all previous sins have been erased. And I actually I had not seen Jason McCange for maybe like 15 years. Yeah. And I saw him on the morning of the grand final in 2016. I was doing a thing for Triple M and he came up and, so I got to actually see the guy who was the reason that I barracked for that team for the last, 40 years of my life on the morning of the greatest day in our football club's history in my lifetime. So, no, it's a really great story and it was really pleasing to me that it did pay off and that I got to see him that day because I really wouldn't have barracked for them. Apart from him, and the other one was Brad Hardy, because I was quite a podgy kid. Yeah. And I had this real identification with Brad Hardy because he was like an awesome footballer, but he kind of had a body shape that looked a bit more like my body shape. And so I was like, well, if that guy can play AFL football, then that was inspiring to me as well. So, yeah. And then this was unbeknownst to me, but the thing that really cemented it was that where I grew up in East Gippsland was back in the day when they used to have zones, it was a Bulldog zone. Okay. So when players would come to the school to do footy clinics and stuff, they were always Bulldogs players. So I was only one of two, probably me and Jason McCange who were Bulldogs fans at our school. So when the Bulldogs guys came, we got a little bit of extra attention and that was about enough. I was pretty cemented on from then. Yeah.
That's excellent. So, and I guess from then on, there was no pressure from the family to go back to the Pies, or it was kind of just you've made your decision, and you feel confident with that, then you're on your own.
It's funny. I was actually thinking about this today because I've never really talked about the fact that I've mentioned it before, but I thought I'll talk to you about it because I thought this would be an interesting place for it, and I was thinking about it a little bit today. And I just think that it's such a ridiculous thing, the idea of I get the idea, don't change to get more success. I would never have changed from the Bulldogs when I was supporting them to go to a more successful team. Yeah. But that wasn't what I was doing. I was going to a less successful team, if anything. But also I was like 6 or 7. Like when I was 6 or 7, I wanted to be like an astronaut or something. You know what I mean? Like you don't lock kids into the decision they make at 6 or 7. And to be honest, sometimes when people come to me and they say, hey, I'm 35 years old. I've always lived in New South Wales or America or whatever. But I want to get into AFL football. We have a lot of them through our podcast because our podcast is really, you don't need to know a lot about football to listen to our podcast. Sometimes it helps. If you really want an informed football podcast, you are often frustrated by the fact that most of ours is Ben Cunnington and Nat Five fan fiction. So, but we get a lot of listeners, from places that aren't traditional AFL places, and they will often say, "Hey, I want to support a team. Who should I support?"
Yep.
And the thing that I say to them is, if I were you, I'd pick a new team every year. I would just enjoy, because it's nothing better than getting to know a team, getting to get really involved in their fortunes. But why limit, if you're 35 or 40 already, why limit yourself to one team? See, I'd love to know what it's like to be an Eagles fan, but just for a year. I don't want to be an Eagles fan for my life. That would be a horrible way to live your existence.
Yeah.
But an Eagles fan for a year, fun. Being a Melbourne fan for a year would be fun. It'd be like listening to all your Nick Cave records at once, Sometimes you just got to be, I'd like to know what it's like, but I don't want to be it. So I think that would be fun.
Yeah, definitely. And it's what's interesting about, being a Bulldogs fan as you are, is that your team is most everybody else's second team, especially 2016. I mean, everyone was on the Bulldogs bandwagon. So for me personally, the Bulldogs have always been, a team that and I think that's what made, we can talk about it now, 2016, what made that so special is that everybody, I feel like most people in the AFL community have a soft spot for the Bulldogs. For whatever reason, it might be because you've had that drought for so long.
I know exactly the reason. You don't have any bad memories against us.
Yeah,
that's the thing about being terrible for ages. Most of the time when you hate a team, it's because they beat you in a grand final or something. We have none of those bad memories. People now we have a couple. If you're a Swans fan, you probably don't like the Bulldogs. GWS don't like us much, because we beat them. There's a little bit of history there because we've actually done you some damage. But back in the day, everyone was just it was patronising. Everyone was just oh, we hope you get your little trophy. Good on you guys. I'm I'll take it. Don't get me wrong. But
absolutely.
You actually want to get to the point where other teams hate you because that means you've been very successful over a long period of time.
That's true. And I think, and from my memory anyway, the Bulldogs always had, colourful characters. Your Dougie Hawkins, obviously, Tony Liberatore, Chris Grant, champions of the game. But again, maybe because based on what you've said, the results-wise, never really that much of a threat, but a good, fun team to watch. And I think a lot of people like the Western Suburbs, the story of the, the other side of the tracks team, and always the underdogs. So I think that's what made 2016 so great. You mentioned Brad Hardy.
Even in 2016, there were 6 clubs, above us on the ladder who probably didn't have very many bad memories about us even from that season. It's not like we were even the dominant team of that season. Everyone was like, we like the Bulldogs. They got into the 8. They can have a crack.
Good on them. And then, we went back on that. So you mentioned Brad Hardy. What other, as a kid growing up, who were the other sort of players that you looked up to and idolised?
I loved Chris Grant. So, Chris Grant could have won 2 Brownlow medals. So he could be a dual Brownlow medalist. I mean, he did win it one year. He was just suspended. And then the other year, I think it was the final game of the season, and I reckon we were playing Essendon, and it might have been Mercury or somebody kicked a goal after the siren, which meant that Essendon won the game, and James Hird got the 3 votes and Chris Grant got the 2 votes. And if he had not kicked that goal after the siren, I bet it would have been the other way around and he would have won 2 Brownlows. He was one of those players that if you were at the Bulldogs, he was a great centre-half forward, he was a great centre-half back. He was almost, too good at one or the other to be great at, to be acknowledged as one of those all-time greats. But as a Bulldogs supporter, I remember when I think it was Port Adelaide wanted to poach him, and then there was that picture of him in the paper with the 50 cents that some kid had sent to Chris Grant to get him to stay at the Bulldogs. And Chris Grant was like, this is the reason I stayed at the Bulldogs, because this kid and his 50 cents. And Peter Gordon was like, that's the best fake letter and 50 cents I've ever spent in my life.
Oh, it doesn't happen anymore. That's a very I don't know, a very old school AFL story, which is what we love. Not to bring it down too much, but we had a question during the day today, because weirdly enough, today was actually 25 years since we lost the great EJ Whitten. And we had a few questions about this and wanted to sort of put it to you. What are some of your, there's obvious ones, but for you as a dog supporter, because again, speaking of how, most of the AFL community love the Dogs, I think EJ was a big part of that. what are some of your sort of memories of EJ and what he means to the club?
I reckon I got introduced to EJ before. It would have been by, like, maybe it was a Mike Brady football album. I think he did like an album that was like, there was a song about Peter Hudson, and there was a song about Peter Moore, and there was one, about Mr. Football, right? Ted Whitten. And but this, like, I don't think that I would have known or been able to make the connection between Ted Whitten being the sort of Mr. Football who was in this song. I was too young. I just kind of, knew this like footy song about this guy, Mr. Football. So like even before I was actually introduced to the legend that was, Ted Senior, his record in the AFL, I think people overlook because of the character that he became after. He became so identified with State of Origin, and we stuck it up him, and that version of EJ that people saw, that they actually forget that he was an incredibly good, footballer, and obviously involved in the, most iconic moment in our history up until 2016. So like he, at the Bulldogs, there isn't a lot of those, legends. So I mean, him and Charlie Sutton were revered on, a level. You heard people talk about them and maybe John Schultz and a few other people, but it wasn't like we had, all these 20 premiership players who played in 5 premierships each and had this sort of legacy. So Ted was, I think, to the Bulldogs, the identity of the Bulldogs. I mean, people talk about Dougie Hawkins, and, there's been a whole bunch of people you could put in that legacy sense. But, EJ was the Bulldogs. If you thought about the Bulldogs, you thought about Ted Whitten. And then for me, as a kid watching State of Origin, because I was that right age, like I reckon I was playing, I think I was playing under 15s schoolboys, like the Victorian Championships, when it was one of the big years of State of Origin, when all the sort of superstar gun players, were playing in State of Origin, and Victoria just had those incredible, dream team, all-star teams. And we one night got to go out and like meet the players. Like we got to watch them train for State of Origin, and then we got to go into the sheds afterwards and meet a bunch of these players. And it was like, it was super exciting. So I love State of Origin. And so obviously EJ, and his contribution to State of Origin, I think was like, his kind of final legacy for the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even for me as a kid, not being a Bulldog supporter, it was obvious how much he meant to the club this is something I thought about today when, doing some research on the Doggies and whatnot. I feel like it was the first time I probably saw on national TV a grown man in tears when they announced it. I remember Eddie announced it live on the footy show. And so obviously the first that, and Doug Hawkins just happened to be on the panel that night, whether that was, on purpose or not, or they had any idea, but that was just not only a pivotal moment in Aussie sport and AFL, but also I feel like TV for me as well, just a moment that was so raw, and that summed up in that moment, I guess, how much EJ meant to the club and to Dougie as well. So unbelievable that it's been 25 years to this day, but definitely obviously a great legacy that he's offered the club. So shame he couldn't be in there and to see it in 2016, but he would have been up and about, which I'm sure you were. Yeah. 2016, you've spoken about it at length. I was trying to think of another angle of this, and I think one thing that I thought of was that, do you think that 2016 was such a big deal for you personally and for a lot of other Bulldogs fans? Do you think it was such a big moment because you thought you might never see it?
I had resigned myself to the fact that I was never going to see it. Wow. I think a couple of years earlier, when we lost, like we had that tumultuous end of season and we ended up without a coach, and Ryan Griffin decided that he was going to, GWS. So we had no coach, we had no captain. We lost I can't remember which CEO, or like there was another, and it just felt like, I'm 40, I would have been 44, 45 years old. I'm not going to see this. I've got to just put away hope that I'm ever going to see this. So the fact that 2 years later, it happened. And the great thing is it kind of happened again. We were good that season. I think, people always remember that we finished 7th, but we won 15 or 16 games. It was one of those seasons where there was a lot of teams in the finals who'd won a lot of games. We were a really good team. And we were definitely the best team in the finals, no doubt about that, because we did it the hard way. You know, we had to go away interstate twice, you know, and win against higher ranked teams on their home grounds. We had to beat Hawthorn, you know, to get there. Like we did everything that you needed to do it. We did it to win it. So we deserved to win it. But
yeah, absolutely.
we weren't the best team in it all year, you know. So it's not like you had any of that sort of. It was all upside. You know, I have a theory that that's the Bulldogs way. You know, we often beat teams above us and fall to teams that are below us. Like that year, we had our perfect entry into the finals, which was kind of finish as far down the ladder as possible in the finals so that you're never playing a team that is actually below you for the rest of the season.
It's a good plan. Yep, that worked.
Yeah.
That's unreal. And so on the day, and I guess you're coming into it with, you know, pretty low expectations, I think, you know, and I imagine you were there going, well, everyone says, oh, we're just happy to make it. But especially for the Dogs, I feel like that year you're like, well, as you said, everything's an upside from now, you know, for us to make it. And just walking around that week, I'm sure you just reveled in it, you know, being one of the teams in it, and especially in Melbourne, just getting around with your scarf on and, you know, the grand final parade. It's all about you and your team. 2016, on that final siren, tell us what happened then.
So firstly, I will say it was an amazing week. And the reason it was an amazing week, I had a conversation with my dad during the finals. And he said to me, do you think they can win it? And this would have only been, you know, I think maybe even after the first final. He said, do you think they can win it? And I said, here's what I think. They think they can win it. And if they think they can win it, then what business do I have thinking they can't win it, right? You know what I mean? So that was my attitude. My attitude was like, no, I didn't really ever consider we would lose. I literally went into that entire week just thinking, I'm going to think that we're going to win. Here's how we're going to win. I believe that we're going to win. And I was doing AFL 360 on the Friday night, and I said that, you know, I talked about what the journey had been and how I believed that we were going to win. And on Monday night on AFL 360, I have this memory because, you know, they do those packages at the start where they'll take various little bits of commentary and they'll put together a package of the day. And they used so much of what I said for this. So there's this grand final package of me on the Friday night just saying, no, I believe that they can win it, that they played on the Monday afterwards in this amazing package. It's like so good. I've watched it like 100 times. Like,
oh, man.
It's just, in fact, after this, I haven't watched it for a while. And after this, now that I've just even the memory of it, I would love it so much. They did such an amazing job with it. And it was just fun that like I was part of it. But I got to be part of it that week. I got to go on AFL 360. I got to be interviewed. I got to, you know, be there on the day surrounded by a bunch of people from the club, but also a bunch of people that I've gone to the football with regularly, you know, Shane Delia and these diehard Bulldogs people, you know, Danny McGinlay, you know, people that I've known for a long time, you know, Bulldogs fans that I've got to talk about the Bulldogs with, and we were all there together. And I went with Charlie, my friend Charlie, who, you know, barracks for the Saints. And I hope, that's why I'm all behind the Saints this season. I hope the Saints go the whole way because I want him to experience it, because we've talked so much about, you know, whether it's better, because I've never even seen them in a grand final before that, right? But he's seen St Kilda lose grand finals. And he always thinks that's worse, that I was actually in a better position. And I was like, well, I'd like to find out. I haven't found out yet. I've never seen them lose the grand final, and I've seen them win one. So I'm absolutely fine with that. We can stay with that. I'm happy not to ever find out. But on the siren, I can't really remember it. I can't remember. Like my memories of the game are from me watching the game. I was so nervous, you know, once it started that but I cried. You know, I remember going up to Shane about, you know, 4 minutes to go, and like Charlie, you know, was very nice. Like that's good about having a neutral there. He filmed it all. He knew this was a good moment, and there's a great video that I have of me whispering, you know, we're going to win. We're going to be the premiers, and we all just kind of start crying. And that's I can't really remember what happened on the final siren, but I remember that moment where we were all just like, we're gonna win this. Yeah, it's done. So it was amazing. It was a weird
feeling. Day. Yeah, absolutely, and that's a weird feeling, and it's one of these things where, because even I was there in 2018, and obviously that went a different way, but even that I purposely didn't drink. I think I had one drink at halftime just to have something to do because it was such a stressful day. But I barely remember of it, and most of it. And I watched the first quarter because that's a great quarter to watch, and then I forget the rest, obviously. But it's weird. I think it's just so stress and so much stress and anxiety with it. But I was there in the replay, and that's I can relate to that feeling of when it's all said and done, but there's still time on the clock, and you're basking in it, and it's a very pinch yourself moment that's going to happen. But especially for you, I'm sure. Will, you've been very generous with your time. We won't take up too much of it. I think the main thing is, what's the plan? You've obviously with COVID, we've plugged Two Guys One Cup, which is a great AFL podcast, very akin to what we do here on Your Call. You don't need to be an expert. We don't. Our classic tagline is we don't stack check, we don't fact check, fuck that. So it's all just based on gut, and we're still surprised. There's games we commentate where there's players just pop up who have been playing for 10 seasons. We haven't seen them and don't know their name yet. So you've obviously got that. We've got Willosophy is another great podcast. You're churning that out. So I'm sure it's been a great opportunity for you to get some guests on that and churn that out.
Yeah, so we have a website. It's called tofop.com, so TOFOP.com. And people can go there and check that out. But basically, we're having 5-day-a-week releases is what we're aiming towards because we've had some time to get it all together. So on a Monday, brand new philosophy with a brand new guest. Tuesday, my other comedy podcast, Fofop, will come out on Tuesdays. Tofop with Charlie comes out on Wednesdays. Thursday's our footy podcast, Two Guys, One Cup. And Friday, there's a catch-up episode of Philosophy where I talk to a previous guest in a brand new episode. So... yeah, we've had plenty of time for our imaginary radio station while we haven't had real work to do.
And I saw a bit of a rumor, maybe you might have started actually on Twitter, that it was some sort of anniversary for the Glass House. So maybe a bit of a reunion on the cards once everyone can get back in the same room.
Somebody told me it had been 19 years, which means next year's 20 years. And look, I'm just looking for options of work. I'll have to get Husey off the Masked Singer or something. So I might have to put it. Husey, I've got a problem. I need a job.
Yeah. Husey, I need to pay rent. Wil Anderson, it's been an absolute pleasure. You've been very generous with your time, and we really appreciate that. Thank you for taking the time to talk about the Doggies with us. It's been a pleasure. Just, I guess, quickly before we go, how are you feeling about this season? Obviously, you had a good win on the weekend, but how are you feeling about the rest of the season?
I mean, I think we'll be lucky to make the finals, but if we make the finals, you never know with the Bulldogs, all bets are off. But I think there are better teams in it than us at the moment. But there's a lot to like about the Bulldogs. Like, I think there's so much great upside. I mean, Norton's amazing. I've decided that we're definitely, like my mum, better with 3 Baileys under your belt. So we've got 3 at the moment, and they're all playing very well. So
very good.
No, it's very nice to watch. If it goes pear-shaped next week against Melbourne, I can just watch the replay of Adelaide again. It's fine.
Yeah. Yep, I think most teams are doing that. Most supporters of every team except Adelaide are taking that leaf. Maybe not me because ours wasn't that good of a performance. But your performance has been very good, Will. Thank you very much again, and we hope to chat to you soon. But for the rest of the season, go Dogs! And everyone check out all the podcasts that Will has on his plate at the moment, which is plentiful. So, Will, thank you again, and we'll chat to you soon.
Thanks, Dan. Cheers, mate.